Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy the story. Remember to like and subscribe. And now the story.
John Glover had lived in Clavenhood for over a decade. He loved his house, his neighborhood, and his friends. He didn't love the homeowners association that governed the community. The HOA was notorious for making up arbitrary and ridiculous rules and enforcing them with hefty fines. John and his fellow residents often felt like they had no say in how they lived in their own homes. One of the most absurd rules that the HOA imposed was that no one could have any visitors for any reason after 10 p.m. and no overnight guests at all. The HOA claimed that this was to maintain the peace and quiet of the neighborhood and to prevent any unwanted incidents. John thought that this was a blatant violation of his privacy and freedom. He wondered how the HOA could even monitor who came and went from his house. He found out the hard way one night when his wife, Lisa, had a severe asthma attack. John panicked and called an ambulance, hoping that they would arrive in time to save her. He didn't think about the HOA rule or the security cameras that were installed on every street corner. He only cared about his wife's life. The ambulance arrived at 1 a.m, and the paramedics rushed Lisa to the hospital. John followed them in his car, praying that she would be okay. He didn't notice the HOA president, Jules Blackwell, watching from his window with a smug smile on his face. The next day, John received a letter from the HOA informing him that he had violated the visitor rule and that he had to pay a fine of $10,000. John couldn't believe what he was reading. He was furious and outraged. He grabbed the letter and stormed to Jules' house, ready to confront him. He knocked on the door, and Jules opened it. He looked at John with a fake expression of concern. "Hello, John. I heard about your wife. How is she doing?" Jules asked. "None of your business. How dare you fine me for calling an ambulance for her? She could have died." John shouted. John, calm down. You know the rules. No visitors after 10 p.m. It doesn't matter who they are or why they are here. You broke the rule, and you have to pay the price," Jules said. John expressed his frustration, stating, "This isn't governance, it's tyranny. You lack the authority to dictate who I associate with in my own home. Monitoring me and my neighbors is a violation of privacy. Additionally, coercing us into funding your arbitrary regulations is unjust. Frankly, you're the most ineffective HOA president I've encountered, and I refuse to tolerate it any longer." He flung the letter toward Jules' face and barged past him into his house. Glancing around, he noticed Jules lived a life of luxury, surrounded by opulent furniture, artwork, and high-end gadgets. On the desk, he spotted a sizable stack of letters bearing the HOA logo. John inquired, "Is this where you store the fines you collect from us? How much money have you earned from enforcing these rules? And how much of it have you used for your own benefit?" Jules tried to grab the letters, but John was faster. He snatched them and opened them. He was shocked by what he saw. Jules had fined almost every resident of Clavenhood for various reasons, such as having the wrong color of curtains, having a dog that barked too loud, having a lawn that was too long or too short, and many more. The fines ranged from $500 to $20,000, depending on Jules' mood. John realized that Jules was using the HOA as a way to extort money from the residents and to control their lives. "This is unacceptable. This is unlawful. You're acting like a thief and a dictator. I will uncover your corruption and take legal action against you and the HOA. I will work to remove you from power and liberate this neighborhood from your oppressive rule," John declared. He ran out of the house, with the letters in his hand. He went to his neighbors and showed them the evidence. They were all shocked and angry. They agreed with John that they had had enough of Jules and the HOA. They decided to band together and fight back. They hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against Jules and the HOA. They accused them of fraud, extortion, harassment, and abuse of power. They demanded that the HOA be dissolved and that Jules be removed from his position. They also demanded that all the fines be refunded and that all the rules be revoked. The lawsuit made the news and attracted the attention of the media and the public. Many people supported John and his neighbors and criticized Jules and the HOA. They praised them for standing up for their rights and for challenging the HOA's authority. The case went to court, and the judge ruled in favor of John and his neighbors. He found Jules and the HOA guilty of all the charges and ordered them to pay a large sum of money to the plaintiffs. He also dissolved the HOA and banned Jules from ever being involved in any HOA again. John and his neighbors rejoiced in their triumph and expressed gratitude toward their lawyer. They felt joyous and relieved knowing they had regained their freedom, allowing them to reside peacefully in their homes. They resolved to establish a fresh HOA with fairer and more democratic regulations. Unanimously, they decided that any future rule must garner the support of at least 75% of the members and that any member could introduce or contest a rule. They elected John as their new HOA president, and he pledged to govern with fairness and respect for all. Upon returning home, John embraced his wife, who had fully recovered from her asthma attack and remained healthy since. Sharing the good news with her, she beamed and tenderly kissed him. Together, they extended invitations to friends and family for a celebratory gathering. Amidst laughter and joy, everyone relished in the moment, unconcerned about the hour or the volume of the festivities.
This incident happened in January of this year. Last year I moved into a neighborhood with an optional HOA. At the time I'd come into enough money to buy a house outright. The only reason I moved here is because the HOA was optional, and it's a nice safe neighborhood. It's a slice of heaven compared to where I used to live. I own 2 vehicles, a 2004 Toyota Camry, and a 1999 Ford F-150. The Camry is my daily driver, while the F-150 is my hauler for when I need it. I bought the truck around the same time I bought the house to help with the move. And I used it to pull a rented trailer when I was moving my stuff in. The F-150 is old, but in good mechanical order. And I try to keep both of my vehicles clean with monthly trips through a car wash. The local HOA did not like me from the start due to my refusal to join. The HOA president was a retired old man who seemed like he had nothing better to do. So he tried multiple times to sell me on joining, and sent me several applications in the mail. But I always declined, politely at first, but when the president got more aggressive, I told him to shove it where the sun doesn't shine. That's when the HOA decided that I was a member anyway, and started sending me fines in the mail with that claim. I knew they were bogus, so I went to the next HOA meeting to dispute the fines. They tried to tell me that by living here, I'm in the HOA whether I liked it or not. This was an obvious power move, and something I was ready for. I could only laugh in amazement of their stupidity, and said as much to them. Then told the board that not only was I not a member, but I'd gotten a lawyer to write up a C&D for them. I handed the envelope over, the board skimmed it, then furiously told me to get out. The fines stopped for a few months, then started right back up again at random. So I popped into another HOA meeting and told them this was not legal. I'm not in their HOA, and I'd take them to court if they didn't stop. And once again I was furiously told to get out. The fines stopped for good, but the HOA president decided I needed to be made an example of. It happened only a few days later. I came home to find my F-150 gone from my driveway. I checked my cameras and saw the HOA president himself walk onto my property. He took out a pocket knife and stabbed each of my truck's tires in the sidewalls, then unscrewed the license plates off, put them in a bag and just casually walked away with them. Then a little while later a tow truck came and hauled my truck away. I called the police, and together we went to see the HOA president. But he wasn't home. With my situation explained, this was not considered a civil matter, but grand theft auto. The police traced the tow truck as being from a local junkyard, and not from an impound lot. I accompanied the police there. Not only was the HOA president present at the junkyard, but my F-150 was there being taken apart by about 4 men. They'd already removed the headlights, hood, bumper, radiator, and all of the panels off the front of the truck by the time we'd gotten there. There was stuff disconnected all over the engine bay, and the catalytic converters had already been cut out. The HOA president looked like a deer in headlights when he saw me there with police. I was nearly angry beyond words when I saw my truck in that condition. Nearly, I say, because I went off like a foul-mouthed country sailor on the people who had ripped my truck apart. The HOA president was caught red-handed, but insisted he'd only towed my truck because it was in a sorry state and looked abandoned. I said he illegally took it off my private property since the HOA had no right to tow off my land, and he clearly had not been aware of my cameras, as they'd seen everything he did. He went pale at first, then furiously tried to stomp towards me looking like he was ready for a fight while yelling my truck had been an eyesore, so he got rid of it. This action earned him some new bracelets and a free ride to the station. The police were somewhat merciful to the junkyard staff, who claimed to have only been doing their jobs. The owner of the junkyard is a cousin to the HOA president. So he was contracted to do any towing for the HOA since he also owned a local impound. He had no idea I wasn't a member of the HOA, and also was not aware his cousin had ordered his employees to tear my truck apart for parts as an abandoned vehicle. The police cited all sorts of broken laws to the employees and owner, and then they agreed to put my truck back together. But I said that it had better be at least as good as it was, if not better, or I'd be going to my lawyer. The owner told his employees to do whatever it takes, or he'd separate them from their jobs. Then told me he'd bill the HOA president for everything later. Then the police and I got to watch as all of those employees had to painstakingly put my truck back together piece by piece. And they repeatedly muttered things about me to each other and flashed me the stink eye from time to time. I'm guessing the HOA president offered to bribe them all to take my truck apart as quickly as possible. But now they had to fix it for free. And they were at it for hours. They had to weld the catalytic converters back in, and even had to replace some parts entirely due to damage caused during hasty disassembly. When they first fired up the engine, it had an obvious misfire. They denied it, but police sided with me that they could tell it had a misfire too. Turns out they ruined one of the coil packs taking the truck apart, and they had to order new parts from a nearby auto parts store to fix it. One of the headlights also stopped working. Again, something that they had to fix because I stated I could prove with my home cameras that they were both working when I last drove it. And the bulbs were nearly brand new LEDs. So they had to have broken something. The coolant lines had also been just cut instead of simply disconnected. Probably because they were trying to take the truck apart in a hurry. So those were more parts that had to be ordered from the nearby store as well. I can only imagine the total cost that was billed to the HOA president for this. All 4 of the tires had to be replaced because they were not repairable. So they had to leave the truck on a lift and take all 4 wheels off. There were other problems too. And all of these junkyard mechanics had to work overtime to put the truck back together on the hopes I wouldn't sue or press charges. I wasn't even able to take the truck home till the next day evening, because the police had to get my plates back, and the junkyard staff had to take the wheels in for new tires. By the time I got the truck back, the 2 junkyard employees I saw there gave me looks that just said not to come back. And the truck actually runs better than before. So I essentially got a free sorta overhaul for my trouble. As for the HOA president, well, I did sue him for trespassing, theft, destruction of property and the illegal tow. He ended up paying his cousin for all of my truck repairs, lost his position in the HOA, and moved out of the neighborhood shortly after losing the lawsuit because he had no leg to stand on in court since everything was caught on CCTV. He pretty much surrendered to the asked for settlement, which is why it didn't get drawn out. The HOA has not bothered me at all since the truck incident. And my neighbors love me for getting rid of the old HOA president as he was a power-tripping narcissist to them all, and kept issuing pointless fines that had to be regularly disputed. Also, I have been back to that junkyard for parts. But for my Camry instead, as I went to pull a replacement grille for it, and found one in excellent shape there. They did recognize me, and gave me dirty looks. But otherwise didn't bother me.
So, the backstory.
I have parked my van for almost a year without any problems on the street in front of my driveway. Yesterday, we see the guy in the middle of the night trying to pull it on his tow truck. I go out, tell him what's going on, to which he replies he received a letter from HOA that they don't want this oversized vehicle on their property, which is clearly a public road, not a fenced or gated community either, and that they want it towed specifically after 1 a.m. The guy tells me he'll let it down, just show me the key, to which I went back inside and did. He lets it go and tells me to park on the street over, saying that it shouldn't be a problem there, which is also a public road with no sign saying that I can't park there.
To which I did, parked for a whole day there, only to find out now that it was towed.
Went to the local PD thinking maybe they towed it or something. Upon checking, they said they didn't do it.
Which came to my mind at that point that tow company did that. I called them asking if they have it or not, to which they said, yeah, we do. It was towed at 1:12 a.m. I started asking questions why it was towed from a public road and etc. To which she said that HOA manager wanted it gone. That's a that. She tells me to stay on hold. Meanwhile, this is all happening right in the police department in front of the desk. The tow company calls it in while I am on hold there with them and tells the cops it was relocated, so they either forgot to do it or something for legal purposes.
I don't know.
But all of this has been a roller coaster to me, to which I don't know how to react, as I'd been the owner for 16 years there and paying my fees all the time, only to get piss on the face from HOA.
No prior notices from them, no emails, no phone calls. Just rats in the middle of the night when they think I am sleeping, trying to get my van away from me. Yesterday I went to my village hall to speak to Public Works Dept.
In order to figure out if the roads are indeed public or not, like some of you suggested. The lady in the cubicle said that roads are public and maintained by my village, snow removal, road maintenance and etc. All by them, even gave me a map.
Ha ha ha.
On top of all that, I was recording, just in case I can't prove my info in the future.
Amidst the tranquil suburbia of Greenleaf Meadows, snuggled amidst rolling hills and lush meadows, a deceptive calm reigned supreme. Here, where the verdant lawns stretched like vast emerald tapestries under the canopy of azure skies, an ominous specter loomed. It wasn't merely the natural shadows cast by swaying trees nor the whispered secrets of twilight that stirred unease, rather, it was the HOA, an enigmatic entity cloaked in bureaucratic veneer yet wielding unbridled dominion over the lives of its inhabitants. At the helm of this seemingly benign organization stood a triad whose names were uttered with disdain in hushed tones, their very mention sending shivers down the spines of Greenleaf Meadows residents. President Marjorie Crenshaw, a figure of austere authority, Treasurer Howard Ramsey, whose calculating gaze held the weight of unspoken ultimatums, and Secretary Dolores Finch, her polite demeanor belying a keenness for control. Behind their affable smiles and genteel gestures lay a realm of tyranny and caprice, where the HOA's corridors echoed with whispered schemes and veiled threats. They wielded the power of the HOA with an iron grip, their decrees enforced with ruthless efficiency, showing favor only to those who bowed to their will and casting aside any who dared to question their authority. Amidst the sea of complacency that engulfed Greenleaf Meadows, there existed a small band of dissenters who simmered with resentment like a smoldering ember amidst the serene landscape. Led by Marcus Johnson, a man whose once unwavering patience had worn thin beneath the weight of injustice, they convened in clandestine gatherings held in the shadowy corners of the community. Their whispers, laden with a potent mixture of determination and defiance, echoed through the night, punctuated by the occasional flicker of candlelight illuminating their resolute faces. Together, they forged a bond of solidarity in their shared discontent, their resolve growing stronger with each passing moment spent plotting against the oppressive forces of the HOA. Their grievances were many, their cause just. The HOA board, drunk on its own authority, had become a beacon of tyranny in the once peaceful neighborhood. Arbitrary fines, selective enforcement, and petty vendettas against those deemed unworthy by the ruling elite had sparked a flame of rebellion in the hearts of the downtrodden. Theirs was indeed a perilous path, fraught with obstacles and uncertainty at every turn. Despite the fervent determination of the dissidents, the majority of Greenleaf Meadows residents remained ensconced in a cocoon of indifference, their apathy serving as a shield that protected the oppressors from facing the repercussions of their tyrannical rule. To these indifferent souls, the discords of the HOA were but distant murmurs, inconsequential whispers that faded into the background noise of everyday life, only registering when they directly impinged upon their personal affairs. Undeterred by the daunting odds stacked against them, Marcus and his steadfast compatriots forged ahead with unwavering determination. Their resolve, like tempered steel, remained unyielding in the face of adversity. With steely determination, they embarked upon their audacious plan to seize control of the HOA from the clutches of the corrupt leadership, fully prepared to employ force if necessary. Through clandestine meetings held in the shadows and whispered conversations conducted under the veil of secrecy, they rallied those brave enough to stand against the tyranny that had gripped their community. Though their numbers were modest, their unity and determination were formidable, a testament to their unwavering commitment to enact change, no matter the cost. As the days stretched into weeks and the weeks into months, a palpable tension settled over the verdant landscape of Greenleaf Meadows like a heavy fog. Whispers of dissent, once relegated to clandestine gatherings and hushed conversations, now echoed openly through the meticulously manicured streets, carrying with them an air of defiance that refused to be stifled. These murmurs of discontent sent ripples of unease coursing through the once tranquil neighborhood, disrupting the carefully curated facade of peace and harmony. With each passing day, the gaping chasm between those who aligned themselves with the rebels and those who remained steadfastly loyal to the status quo deepened, widening like a voracious moth threatening to swallow the community whole, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the once unified enclave. On a fateful evening shrouded in darkness, the storm they had long anticipated finally descended upon Greenleaf Meadows. It was as if the very heavens themselves had conspired to lend an ominous backdrop to the rebellion that brewed beneath the surface. The rebels, their spirits aflame with righteous indignation, rallied together in a display of unwavering solidarity. With hearts ablaze and minds resolute, they launched their audacious assault on the fortress of the HOA, their footsteps echoing like thunderclaps through the deserted streets. Armed with nothing but the weapons of determination and a burning desire for justice, they marched forward, undeterred by the perils that lay ahead. Chaos erupted like a dormant volcano suddenly awakened in the once peaceful enclave of Greenleaf Meadows. The clash between oppressors and rebels ignited the tranquil streets, transforming them into a savage battleground of frenzied desperation. Fists, once clenched in quiet frustration, now flew with unrestrained fury, their impact resounding like thunderclaps through the night air, leaving bruises and bloody faces in their wake. Swords clashed and shields splintered as combatants engaged in a primal dance of survival, their movements fueled by a potent mixture of fear, anger, and determination. Voices, once mere murmurs of discontent, rose in anguished cries, their lamentations piercing the air and mingling with the clatter of weapons and the cries of the wounded. The clamor of battle filled the night, drowning out all other sounds save for the frantic beating of hearts and the ragged gasps of those locked in mortal combat. The air crackled with the fervor of revolution, thick with the acrid scent of sweat and blood, intermingled with the heady aroma of burning torches and smoldering debris. Flames licked at the edges of buildings, casting eerie shadows that danced across the faces of combatants locked in deadly embrace. Amidst the chaos and tumult, tragedy lurked in the shadows like a malevolent specter, biding its time, ready to claim its unsuspecting victims in its cold embrace, leaving behind a trail of broken bodies and shattered dreams. The authorities, their ears pricked by the discordant symphony of battle, swiftly mobilized and descended upon Greenleaf Meadows like avenging angels. Their arrival was heralded by the thunderous beat of hooves and the piercing wail of sirens, casting a pall of dread over the besieged enclave. With ruthless efficiency, they quelled the rebellion, their forces overwhelming the valiant but outnumbered rebels who dared to challenge their dominion. Marcus still yelling into the dark that this was not over. Born of noble intentions and fueled by righteous indignation, the rebellion was mercilessly crushed beneath the heel of law and order, its aspirations dashed and its hopes extinguished in the harsh light of reality. In its wake, Greenleaf Meadows lay cloaked in a shroud of sorrow and despair, the echoes of battle fading into the cold embrace of silence, leaving behind only ashes and shattered dreams as haunting reminders of the price of defiance. In the aftermath of the failed uprising, Greenleaf Meadows lay as a landscape marred by the scars of conflict and the fissures of division. Where once there was unity and camaraderie among neighbors, now there existed only suspicion and resentment, like poison seeping into the very heart of the community. The once united community had been torn asunder by the folly of ambition and the oppressive hand of authority, leaving behind a fractured tableau of broken dreams and shattered trust. The rebels, once hailed as champions of justice, now found themselves branded as traitors and agitators, their names whispered in disdain and their faces shunned by those they had sought to liberate. Cast out into the unforgiving wilderness of exile, they wandered like ghosts, haunted by the specter of their defeat and the bitter taste of betrayal. Their hopes, once lofty and bright, lay dashed against the unforgiving rocks of reality, their aspirations crushed beneath the weight of the oppressive regime they had dared to defy. Even as the chaos subsided and the wounds began to heal, the legacy of the rebellion continued to echo through the quiet streets of Greenleaf Meadows, a lingering testament to the indomitable spirit of resistance that had stirred within the hearts of its inhabitants. The scars of the conflict served as a somber reminder of the price paid for challenging the oppressive regime that had once held sway over the community. In the aftermath of the uprising, the once idyllic enclave bore witness to a profound shift in its collective consciousness as the residents grappled with the harsh realities of their newfound divisions and the consequences of their inaction. It became evident that the repercussions of the rebellion extended far beyond the fate of the rebels themselves, leaving an indelible mark on all who called Greenleaf Meadows home. Their lives, once defined by tranquility and complacency, were now forever altered by the bitter taste of loss and regret, serving as a poignant reminder of the enduring cost of freedom until the explosion at the HOA's president's house. It seems someone has decided to go to war after all.
Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy the story. Remember to like and subscribe. And now the story.
Travis had always prided himself on his peaceful suburban life. He had a cozy home, a well-maintained yard, and a strict adherence to minding his own business. However, it seemed that tranquility was a fleeting concept, especially when his neighbor, Bill, was involved. Bill, with his propensity for complaint and his seemingly endless devotion to the Homeowners Association, HOA, had become somewhat of a legend in their neighborhood. His latest crusade? Allegations of Travis owning a dragon and installing an invisible electric fence. Travis couldn't help but roll his eyes at the absurdity of it all. On a radiant afternoon, Travis stood his ground, met by an unexpected visit from the HOA delegation, headed by the formidable figure of Mr. Jenkins, whose stern countenance seemed carved from granite. "You, Mr. Travis, harbor a dragon," Mr. Jenkins pronounced, his voice carrying the weight of authority and accusation, as though he were unveiling a long-hidden secret of the utmost gravity. Travis blinked in disbelief, his mind struggling to grasp the absurdity of the accusation. "A dragon?" "Seriously," he retorted, his voice laced with incredulity, as if daring Mr. Jenkins to provide a shred of evidence to support such a fantastical claim. "Yes, indeed," Mr. Jenkins pressed on, his accusatory tone carrying an air of authority. "And as if a dragon weren't enough, you've also seen fit to erect an illegal invisible electric fence," he declared, producing what appeared to be dubious photographic evidence, as if challenging Travis to refute the damning accusation. The tension in the air crackled with the weight of the allegations, setting the stage for a battle of wits and wills. Travis sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Even if I entertain the notion of having a dragon, which I don't because dragons are real, what proof do you have of this supposed electric fence?" "We have received complaints from your neighbor, Mr. Bill, and we take these matters very seriously," Mr. Jenkins stated firmly. Travis glanced at the grainy photos, struggling to discern any semblance of reality within them. "Well, I hate to break it to you, but I'm not a member of your HOA. So, even if I did have an electric fence, which again, I don't, your rules wouldn't apply to me," he retorted, feeling a surge of frustration. Mr. Jenkins bristled at Travis's defiance. "Rules are rules, Mr. Travis. Take down the fence immediately, or we will take legal action," he threatened, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "Fine. Have at it," Travis replied, his patience wearing thin. "And for the record, get off my property and never come back." Unbeknownst to the HOA, Travis had installed surveillance cameras around his property, capturing every interaction with meticulous detail. His doorbell ring camera, in particular, had proven invaluable in documenting the HOA's persistent attempts to gain access to his home. True to their word, Travis received legal papers for the impending lawsuit less than 2 weeks later. With a resigned sigh, he contacted his lawyer to handle the matter. The day of the court hearing arrived, and Travis found himself sitting nervously in the courtroom, flanked by his lawyer. The judge, a no-nonsense individual with a piercing gaze, wasted no time in getting to the heart of the matter. "Are you suing Mr. Travis because he allegedly possesses an illegal invisible electric fence?" the judge inquired, his expression unreadable. "Yes, Your Honor," the HOA representative confirmed, their confidence wavering slightly under the judge's scrutiny. "And how exactly is this fence invisible?" the judge pressed, a hint of skepticism creeping into his voice. "It's a peculiar situation, Your Honor," the representative stumbled over their words, their demeanor betraying a sense of unease as they attempted to navigate the murky waters of explanation. "You see, the fence, it's invisible," they faltered, their voice trailing off uncertainly, as if hoping the invisibility itself would somehow validate the legality of their actions. Yet, in the face of scrutiny, their words seemed to dissipate like mist, leaving behind a palpable tension in the courtroom. Travis's lawyer seized the opportunity to present the irrefutable evidence, showcasing the footage of the HOA's numerous attempts to trespass on Travis's property. The judge's eyebrows shot up in astonishment as he watched the exchanges unfold. "And what about this alleged dragon?" the judge inquired, his tone tinged with amusement. Travis couldn't help but smirk as his lawyer recounted the absurd accusations made by Bill and the HOA. The judge's laughter filled the courtroom, echoing off the walls. "In all my years on the bench, I've never heard such a preposterous claim," the judge remarked, wiping away tears of mirth. "This lawsuit is nothing short of frivolous, and if you ever dare to bring such nonsense before my court again, I will not hesitate to pursue criminal charges." With a swift motion, the judge ruled in Travis's favor, ordering the HOA to pay all legal fees and an additional sum for Travis's inconvenience. Furthermore, he issued a restraining order barring the HOA from ever setting foot on Travis's property again under threat of criminal trespassing charges. As Travis exited the courtroom, a sense of vindication washed over him. He couldn't help but chuckle to himself as he imagined the look on Bill's face when he heard the verdict. "Today's a real triumph for justice," Travis remarked to his lawyer, a playful twinkle lighting up his eyes. With a satisfied grin, he added, "And now, it's time to embark on our next daring adventure, to feed the mighty dragon that guards the path to our next conquest."
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.
My garage shares a wall with my neighbor's garage, separated by only about a meter.
The tricky part is that beyond our garage doors lies property belonging to the homeowners association.
Now, here's the rub. My neighbor, let's call her Mrs. Karen, not her real name, but that fits, has this habit of placing her trash bin smack dab in the narrow space between our garage doors. You see, Mrs. Karen has a single car parked in her garage, leaving ample room on the other side of her garage door for her trash cans. But no, they end up right in front of my garage door, creating a frustrating obstacle course for me every time I need to leave. Every time I jump into my car, excited to get going, I'm faced with this frustrating obstacle course. Mrs. Karen's trash cans are always right there, blocking my way. I end up having to twist and turn my car in this weird two-step dance just to get out of my own garage. It's not just annoying, it's downright aggravating.
It's like a daily dose of irritation that I could really do without.
I tried talking to her about it, politely asking her to please relocate her trash bins to the other side of her garage door. But alas, our requests have fallen on deaf ears.
In fact, we've even caught her in the act, pushing those pesky bins right in front of our garage door, despite our previous conversations.
I was so fed up and couldn't take it anymore. So I mustered up all my courage and went to talk to Mrs. Karen about her trash bin problem.
I even brought along some pictures I took to prove my point.
It was a sunny afternoon when I finally decided to confront her about it.
Her response?
Well, let's just say it wasn't exactly neighborly.
Instead of acknowledging her actions or attempting to find a solution, Mrs. Karen responded with snide remarks and personal insults.
She even had the audacity to mock my aspirations for the future, as if that had anything to do with the trash bin situation. Feeling both exasperated and a bit hurt by her response, I retreated back to my own garage, pondering my next course of action. It seemed clear that reasoning with Mrs. Karen was a lost cause, but I refused to let her inconsiderate behavior continue unchecked. I was dead set on fixing this mess, so I called up the people in charge, the HOA, and I told them all about with Mrs. Karen and how she kept breaking the rules.
I even showed them the pictures I had. Luckily, they listened to me and promised to do something about it. It felt good knowing that someone was finally taking me seriously. Then, a few days later, everyone in the neighborhood got a letter reminding them about where to put their trash bins and what would happen if they didn't follow the rules. It was like a light bulb went off in Mrs. Karen's head, because suddenly her trash cans were in the right spot away from my garage door. It was a relief to see things finally falling into place.
Finally, with the garbage bin mess sorted out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders.
It wasn't easy, and I had to keep at it for a while, but eventually things worked out. It just goes to show, sometimes you gotta stick to your guns and wait it out for things to make sense. Things between Mrs. Karen and me took a turn for the worse. She seemed to be even more confrontational than before. But oddly enough, after the trash bin debacle, our interactions became even more tense.
Maybe she was doubling down on her bad behavior, refusing to admit any fault. Or perhaps she was just looking for someone to blame for her own mistakes. Either way, it was clear that the situation wasn't improving anytime soon. Either way, I learned an important lesson from the whole ordeal. Sometimes standing up for what's right means not backing down, even when faced with opposition. And in the end, it's worth it to fight and not have less peace and harmony in the neighborhood.
I'll start this off by saying my ex is vindictive as hell.
We've been fully divorced since about right before the pandemic started. We sold the house we shared, and I didn't have to pay her alimony because she cheated and we're in an at-fault state.
It was messy since D-Day.
All of the stereotypes. First the sobbing and then trickle truths saying I love you. It was just one time. Okay, it was 2 years. And then the gaslighting followed by, I'm going to take you for everything, before packing her shit and walking out. I feel like I never really knew the woman my ex was in all the time we were together.
We were married 5 years and together for 7. And in 2 of those 5 married years, she had affairs with 3 other men.
The final one being a foreign businessman of some sort from what I could find out. Yes, I got tested for STDs and was thankfully negative.
Yes, she got pregnant by the final AP. And no, I didn't sign the birth certificate because I found out about the all affairs before the baby was born, thanks to a call from the first AP.
My ex tried to go full scorched earth on me.
But since we live in and were married in an at-fault state, she lost. We didn't pay equally into our house, and the equity was divided 70-30.
So I got a pretty good cash payout when I sold our marital home to put as a down payment on a different house, closer to my job. It's a bit of a downgrade.
But suits a single guy in his 30s like me just fine.
My ex did show up to my house once.
But I refused to let her in. She bitched at me that I'd financially ruined her in the divorce. I said that if she was fully willing to do that to me first, and the bitch had the audacity to say it should have been my life, FKD, over and not hers. I laughed so hard and said it was karma. She yelled that she'd sue me for what was rightfully hers.
I said if she was going to sue me, then to go ahead and sue me.
It'd end up the same way in court because she has nothing but a false sob story. She was the cheater, not me. I'm no angels that I didn't do anything to her.
And she was the one who ruined our marriage.
She then said she'd tell everyone she could that I abused her. I said I'd sue her for defamation if she did, and I was recording our interaction and had those words saved to my phone.
She went wide-eyed and her jaw dropped.
The look people are calling the surprised Pikachu face.
Then I asked why she was there, if not to just try and make trouble. Because she had a new man in her life that knocked her up.
She just huffed at me and said he isn't around much, and she's stuck in a tiny apartment living off his child support till he comes back.
It was immature of me, I know, but I did the bit of playing the world's smallest violin. She yelled at me to go F myself, and I yelled back that I'd sooner do that than her any time. She raged at me and then got in her car to leave.
Haven't seen her since. There is an HOA in my neighborhood. But I was not legally obligated to join it because the last owner of my house was not a member.
I made sure of that through a real estate lawyer as well.
The HOA had no grounds to force me to join, and were not happy about it.
The HOA president would show up with forms every week for the first month, demanding I sign them.
Then she threatened to take me to court.
To which I had to get a C&D sent to her from my lawyer to make her stop that.
So she started harassing me by looking for any infractions she possibly could to report to the city. An inspector came out several times and found nothing wrong. In fact, I offered one of them a burger while grilling, and they graciously accepted. Did I mention the HOA hates barbecues and parties that aren't approved in advance? Well, they do.
And I like to grill when the weather is good. And my neighbors actually love me for it because I invite them over. I had the police called on me several times for noise complaints because I was playing music on a Saturday afternoon while having my friends over. The HOA president I caught trespassing once when she was trying to peer into my windows.
I called the police, but she denied ever doing it.
So I got cameras.
She hasn't trespassed since.
But I still got repeated passive-aggressive letters saying my cameras were not an approved addition to my house.
Some months ago, I started getting letters for fines in the mail. And when I contacted the HOA, their representative claimed they had it on record that I'd joined and needed to pay all fees effective immediately. I told them that was not possible. Then they emailed a scanned copy of the forms, and they had a signature on them. But it was not mine. It was very similar in some ways, and I recognized right away as being my ex's handwriting. She knew what my signature looked like.
But it was a loose imitation at best. I got in touch with a lawyer right away over the forged signature.
But the HOA still demanded to go to court. And it took 7 months before that happened. Meanwhile, they were stacking unpaid fines against me weekly and were threatening to put a lien on my house.
We went to court, and the HOA president looked very smug. But my lawyer pointed out the signature wasn't the same as mine and was very inconsistent in the various forms.
I'd never allowed the HOA president in my house, and I'd never requested the forms. The idiot HOA president actually slammed her palm on the table and said it was still binding. But when pressed where the fraudulent signature came from, she admitted my ex-wife called the HOA, and they sent her the forms, then got them back in the mail signed.
But then she actually claimed she'd thought I'd signed them.
The judge looked at her and asked if she was serious. She confirmed she was. The judge then asked how a woman I was no longer married to, that had never even lived with me in my current residence, was supposed to have any bearing on whether or not I joined her. She went quiet, and I could see the "oh shit" look on her face as the hamster wheels were turning, and she seemed to finally mentally put the pieces together.
My lawyer then counterclaimed that what the HOA did was blatant fraud and legal actions must be taken.
And they were.
I countersued the HOA for the emotional distress of the harassment I'd gotten since moving in, which I had lots of proof of.
That won me about 10 grand after lawyer fees that I decided to put towards my mortgage. The HOA president was removed from her throne.
I like to think she was kicking and screaming.
She was also slapped with a hefty fine.
I've seen her outside a few times, and she always looks at me like I am the devil.
The HOA itself had to pay all of my legal fees too.
I wanted to go after my ex for forging my signature.
But can't, because not long after she forged my signature on those forms, she apparently left the country to be with her third AP.
She's somewhere in Europe from what I can see of the final posts on her FB before she disappeared. So I can't do anything against her unless she ever returns to the US.
So that was a wash.
I'm not getting letters from the HOA anymore though.
And the new president has promised to keep things completely cordial from now on. I still don't feel like I got much of a win in this though.
Other than the $10K payout, it all felt like a huge waste of time. Let me start out with this is not my story. I heard this down at a veterans hospital where I work and now prepare for AHOA imploding.
Jack Wilson was a loner. He didn't have many friends or family or anyone to care for. His house, his pride, and his duty were all he had. For 6 years he had served in the Navy, and he had been deployed to several hotspots around the world.
He had seen the worst of humanity, but he had also done his best to protect his country and its allies.
He had earned his honor, his dignity, and his respect.
But his house was also his love.
It was a modest one-story bungalow in a gated community with a small lawn and a porch. He had bought it with his savings from his naval service, and he had maintained it with his own hands. He had painted the walls, fixed the roof, and mowed the grass. He had made it his home. Unbeknownst to Jack, his cherished abode teetered on the edge of jeopardy. The shadowy dealings of his homeowners association, known simply as the HOA, remained concealed from his discerning eye. In the clandestine depths of their scheming, they orchestrated the seizure of his property, swiftly exchanging ownership and covertly lining their pockets with the proceeds. Ignorant to their nefarious agenda, he remained oblivious to their transgressions against the law, his rights violated, and his trust callously betrayed by their cunning maneuvers. He only found out when he came back from his last deployment. He had been away for over a year, fighting in a war zone. He had survived many attacks, explosions, and ambushes. He had lost some of his mates, but he had also saved many others. He had done his duty and he was ready to go home. Arriving at his house, a sense of anticipation enveloped him, craving the solace it promised.
The image of his manicured lawn, welcoming porch, and sturdy walls danced in his mind, a vision of home awaiting his return.
But none of that was there.
Instead, a stranger stood on his porch, a woman he had never met before. A different car, a different cat, a different lawn.
A different house. Confused and furious, he confronted the stranger, who claimed to be the new owner of the house. She said that she had bought it from the HOA, who had told her that the previous owner had died. She said that she had the papers, the keys, and the rights to the property. She said that Jack had no business there and that he should leave. Jack was shocked and outraged. He knew that the stranger was lying, that the HOA was lying, that the whole thing was a scam.
He knew that he had paid his dues and taxes, that he had not died, that he had been on deployment.
He knew that he had the law, the justice, and the truth on his side. He knew that he had to fight back. He contacted his lawyer, who contacted the JAG, the Navy Judge Advocate General's Corps. They explained to him that what the HOA had done was illegal, that they had violated the Service Members Civil Relief Act, or SCRA, which protected the rights and property of sailors on active duty.
They told him that he had a strong case and that they would help him sue the HOA.
They filed a lawsuit and they went to court. They presented the evidence, the witnesses, and the arguments. They exposed the HOA's fraud, corruption, and greed. They proved that the HOA had broken 11 federal laws and that they had harmed Jack and his property.
The judge was furious.
He ruled in favor of Jack, and he awarded him $1.5 million in damages. He also ordered the HOA to return his house and his property or face federal prosecution. He also ordered the HOA to be dissolved and the board members to be investigated. He said that what they had done was despicable and that they deserved to be punished. Jack was relieved and happy.
He got his house back and he moved in with his cat, his lawn, his walls. He got his home back and he resumed his life.
He got his justice back and he felt vindicated. He never saw the HOA board members again. He heard rumors that they had been arrested, convicted, and sent to prison. He did not care. He was glad that they were gone and that they could not hurt anyone else.
Jack emerged from the crucible of adversity, his home restored, his honor intact.
Though scars of betrayal may linger, they serve as a reminder of his unwavering resolve, a resolve forged in the crucible of adversity, tempered by the fires of justice.
I always wanted to have a gazebo in my backyard. A place where I could relax, read a book, or enjoy a barbecue with my family and friends. I had saved enough money to buy the materials and hire a contractor to build it. It was not a big or fancy gazebo, just a simple wooden structure with a roof and some benches. I thought it would look nice and cozy in my spacious backyard, surrounded by trees and flowers. But I didn't count on Todd Jensen, the president of the HOA, to ruin my dream. Todd was a nosy and bossy neighbor who liked to meddle in everyone's business. He was always looking for ways to enforce the HOA rules, which were vague and outdated. He had a personal grudge against me, ever since I beat him in a golf tournament last year. He was a sore loser and a bad sport. As soon as he saw the gazebo being built, he came over to my house and started yelling at me. He said that I was violating the HOA rules by adding a non-approved structure to my property, that I needed to get permission from the HOA board before making any changes to my house or yard. He angrily stated that the gazebo was an eyesore and a safety hazard, and that it would lower the value of the neighborhood and that he would issue fines to me every day until I removed the gazebo. I was shocked and angry by his accusations. I told him that I had done my research and that I didn't need any permission from the HOA to build the gazebo and showed him the city building codes, which stated that structures under a certain size and height did not require a permit. I told him that the gazebo was well built and sturdy, and that it was not a danger to anyone, that the gazebo was a personal and private addition to my backyard, and that it was none of his business. Todd was not convinced. He said that the city codes did not matter, and that the HOA rules were more important, stating that the HOA bylaws required approval for any structure that altered the appearance of the property. He said that the gazebo was clearly visible from the street and from other houses, and that it was an eyesore. He said that the gazebo was a magnet for kids, who would climb on it and get hurt. He yelled that he was the president of the HOA, and that he had the final say on what was allowed or not. I argued back, saying that the HOA bylaws were not clear on this matter, and that they were open to interpretation. The gazebo did not alter the appearance of the property, but enhanced it. I clarified that the gazebo was not visible from the street, and that it was hidden by the fence and the trees. As well, the gazebo was not open to the public, and that only my family and guests could use it. I angrily suggested that he was not the president of the HOA, but a dictator who abused his power. We went back and forth for a while, until we realized that we were not going to agree on anything. Todd stormed off, saying that he would see me in court. I slammed the door, saying that I would see him at the HOA meeting. The next day, I received a letter from Todd, stating that he had issued a fine of $100 for violating the HOA rules. He said that the fine would increase by $50 every day until I removed the gazebo. He said that if I failed to pay the fines or comply with the rules, he would take legal action against me. I was furious. I knew that he was bluffing, and that he had no legal grounds to sue me. I also knew that he was trying to intimidate me, and that he hoped that I would give up and tear down the gazebo. But I was not going to let him win. It was time to fight back, and to challenge his authority. I called some of my neighbors, who were also fed up with Todd's tyranny. They agreed to support me, and to help me get rid of Todd as president. We formed a coalition, and we started to campaign for a new HOA board. We contacted other homeowners, and we explained to them why Todd was bad for the neighborhood. We told them how he was unreasonable, unfair, and rude. Informed them how he was imposing his own rules, and ignoring the wishes of the majority. Showed them how he was wasting the HOA funds, and neglecting the common areas. He was making our lives miserable, and how we needed a change. We also nominated my wife, Lisa, as the new president. Lisa was a smart and friendly woman, who had a lot of experience in management and leadership. She had a vision for the neighborhood, and she had a plan to improve it. She wanted to update the HOA rules, and to make them more clear and flexible. Also wanted to involve the homeowners in the decision-making process, and to respect their opinions and preferences, wanted to use the HOA funds wisely, and to invest in the maintenance and beautification of the common areas. And finally, she wanted to create a sense of community, and to foster a positive and harmonious atmosphere. The HOA meeting was due in a few weeks, and we were ready to face Todd and his cronies. Enough signatures gathered to force an election, and we had prepared our speeches and arguments. Confidences were high that we had the majority of the votes, and that we would win. The day of the meeting arrived, and we went to the community hall. Todd was there, with a smug and arrogant look on his face. He had brought some of his loyal supporters, who were also on the HOA board. Todd had also hired a lawyer, who was supposed to scare us with legal jargon and threats. The meeting started, and Todd took the floor. He gave a long and boring speech, in which he praised himself and his achievements. He droned on that he had done a great job as president, and that he had protected and enhanced the value of the neighborhood. He said that he had enforced the HOA rules, and that he had maintained order and discipline. Challenges and opposition had been faced, but that he had overcome them with courage and determination. He stated that he deserved to be re-elected, and that he was the best person for the job. Then, he turned to me, and he attacked me and my gazebo. He claimed that I was a troublemaker, and that I had violated the HOA rules. He explained that I had built a non-approved structure, and that I had refused to remove it, stating that I had ignored his warnings and fines, and that I had challenged his authority. He said that I had caused a nuisance and a disturbance, and that I had lowered the value of the neighborhood. He pointed out that I had to be stopped, and that he would sue me if I didn't comply. He finished his speech, and he asked the homeowners to vote for him. He clarified that only he kept the neighborhood safe and beautiful, that he was the only one who could defend the HOA rules and rights, and that he was the only one who could deal with me and my gazebo. He plopped into his seat, shooting me a smug, self-assured grin. He believed he'd emerged victorious, convinced he'd swayed everyone to his side. He thought he'd defeated me, tarnished my image, and believed he held all the power, the last word. But Todd was horribly wrong. I stood up, and I took the floor. I gave a short and powerful speech, in which I exposed him and his lies. I said that he had done a terrible job as president, and that he had harmed and degraded the value of the neighborhood. I stated how he had abused the HOA rules, and that he had imposed his own will and whims. Also, yes, he had faced some challenges and opposition, but that he had reacted with hostility and aggression. I disputed that he did not deserve to be re-elected, and that he was the worst person for the job. Then, I turned to him, and I defended myself and my gazebo. I reiterated that I was not a troublemaker, but a homeowner who wanted to enjoy his property. That I had not violated the HOA rules, but that I had followed the city codes. His warnings and fines were not ignored but that I had challenged his legitimacy. I added that I had not caused a nuisance or a disturbance, but that I had added value and charm to the neighborhood. I reassured that I did not have to be stopped, and that he had no grounds to sue me. I finished my speech, and I asked the homeowners to vote for Lisa. I told everyone that she was the best candidate for president, and that she had a vision and a plan for the neighborhood. I stated that she wanted to update and improve the HOA rules, and to make them more clear and flexible. I pointed out that she wanted to involve and respect the homeowners, and to listen to their opinions and preferences. She wanted to use and invest the HOA funds wisely, and to beautify and maintain the common areas. I added that she wanted to create and foster a sense of community, and to promote a positive and harmonious atmosphere. I sat down, and I looked at Todd with a confident and defiant look on my face. I knew that I had won, and that I had convinced everyone to vote for Lisa, confident that I had crushed him, and that a change was coming. The time came for the vote, and we were all anxious and excited. Todd looked nervous and angry, while Lisa looked calm and confident. The homeowners filled out their ballots, and handed them to the secretary, who counted them. The result was announced, and it was a landslide victory for Lisa. She had won by a large margin, and she was the new president of the HOA. Todd had lost, and he was out of power. The homeowners cheered and applauded, and they congratulated Lisa. They thanked her for running, and they expressed their support and trust, and they were looking forward to working with her, and to seeing the changes that she would bring. They were happy and relieved, and that they felt hopeful and optimistic. We smiled, and we walked out of the hall, hand in hand. Arriving at our house, and we admired our gazebo. It was still standing, and it was still beautiful. It was our gazebo, and it was our victory.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.